Hi, friends, and welcome to Mysterious Stories. On May 26, 1990, a peaceful holiday morning in the small hamlet of Wellington, USA, led to a tragedy that no one could have imagined. Most families were taking it easy in their peaceful neighborhood, sleeping in, making brunch, catching up on chores, or just spending time together. One of these families was led by a woman named Marlene Kendall, but some accounts call her Marlene. Marlene was 40 years old and a dedicated wife and mother. She was happy with her husband Michael. Their son, Joe, had two friends over the evening before, friends who had stayed late, occupied themselves with television and food, and slept over for the night. The next morning, Marlene was up early, preparing a nice breakfast, pancakes, eggs, and freshly brewed coffee in her homey kitchen. The smell filled the house and wafted into the living room, where Joe and his buddies were happily sleeping on the couch. The lace curtains let in the early light, and the mood was calm and innocent. No one knew how quickly that serenity would end. A killer clown at the door. Marlene was lost in thought in the kitchen when a loud knock on the door woke her up at 10:45 a.m. Expecting a neighbor or acquaintance, she moved to open it, but what she discovered was considerably more alarming: a clown, clothed head to toe in colorful costume, waiting on her porch. In one hand, the clown held a flower basket and in the other, a bunch of balloons. For a split second, Marlene froze, perplexed and scared. A clown? Why would someone in full clown regalia, complete with makeup, weird shoes, and polka dots, be at her door? Was this some nasty prank, or worse, a threat? Fear rippled across her face. Before she could respond further, the clown grabbed a revolver from his or her costume pocket, pointed it at Marlene's face, and shot. The single gunshot boomed across the house, converting tranquility into turmoil. Inside, Joe and his two buddies, hearing the shot, rose to their feet and sprinted toward the front entrance. They reached the doorstep just as the clown rushed away, got into a getaway car, and sped off, leaving behind startled neighbors and a family in anguish. By the time officials came, Marlene had already perished from the gunshot wound. Joe, in astonishment, could not grasp that his mother was deceased on the entrance of their home. He screamed, cried, and demanded explanations, but Marlene was gone. The shock town and a puzzling crime scene, Wellington, known for its peacefulness and neighborly nature, was stunned. A killer clown? Murders in clown costumes were unheard of, a horrific twist that instilled panic across the town. Reports soon emerged. 2 or 3 witnesses in the vicinity had seen the clown draw the trigger, verifying that the perpetrator was indeed disguised as some caricature of a children's entertainer. The local police force descended upon the scene, but in 1990, surveillance technology was scant. Few security cameras existed in residential areas or small enterprises. No license plate readers, no ubiquitous traffic cameras. Detectives had only the clothing, balloons, flower basket, clown costume, and minimal physical evidence to go on. The killer's getaway automobile, identified by witnesses as a stolen vehicle, was found abandoned near a small grocery store just outside town. Inside, investigators discovered several strands of human hair, torn and detached, trapped in the fabric near the door. These hairs were carefully packaged and saved as evidence, the only physical link to the killer. A desperate investigation amid little leads, detectives realized the clown costume might be traceable. Someone must have bought or leased it recently. With few alternate leads, they commenced a sweep of costume shops in Wellington and adjacent towns. In 1990, costumes were physical goods, bright fabrics, stretched seams, generic formulas, but stores often kept purchase registers and inventory logs. Detectives investigated receipts, spoke to personnel, and asked about anyone who had bought or tried on a clown suit. The search originally looked futile, until a small town costume boutique owner recalled a woman buying a clown costume a few days ago. She remembers her distinctly, not a child, but a woman in her mid-30s to early 40s, who came in and paid in cash. The owner hadn't thought much of it at the time. Clown outfits were typical around holidays and community activities. The woman had paid in cash and went swiftly. but they possessed his purchase receipt and the date of sale, May 22, just 4 days before the murder. The cops used that receipt as a lead and sought to locate the purchaser. Sheila Keene. The shocking discovery through cross-referencing municipal employment records, the investigation focused attention on a lady named Sheila Keene, a middle-aged office employee at a local business. Sheila worked with Michael Kendall, Marlene's husband. It turned out she lived nearby and had no criminal record. Detectives hauled her in for questioning. Under questioning, she said she bought the clown suit for a surprise birthday party, though she couldn't present any invitation or explanation. Sheila was evasive, but without new proof, the probe paused. The murderous clown case continued to torment authorities and the Kendall family. Marital strain, motive, and property detectives probed into the Kendalls' personal lives and found early disputes. Marlene and Michael had married in 1972. It was Marlene's second marriage, following a previous one during which she produced 2 sons, Joe and John. Tragically, John died of sickness in 1988, leaving a lingering sadness. Initially, Michael had been supportive, caring for Marlene and her son, Joe. But detectives revealed alarming behavioral swings over the prior years, Michael's career, stress, and something, or someone, at his office. Office chatter said that Sheila and Michael had grown abnormally close. Colleagues complained they seemed to flirt too carelessly, even exhibiting fondness beyond professional norms. Meanwhile, Michael and Marlene's relationship was worsening. Marlene apparently expressed a wish for separation, but Michael was obstinate. Complicating matters was the prenuptial contract and Marlene's large property holdings, all registered completely in her name. A divorce or separation would damage Michael financially, a death would transfer all possessions to him. Detectives began to discern a pattern: marital unhappiness, financial motive, opportunity, and a strange costume buy. Police pressure, but no arrest with Michael and Sheila as the major suspects. Cops increased surveillance and interrogation. Michael and Sheila both denied misconduct and maintained innocence. Lacking specific physical proof connecting them to the clown suit or pistol, authorities could not make arrests. Though they continued frequent questioning, the inquiry effectively chilled as clues dried up. Michael and Sheila's apparent connection persisted, unaffected, or at least unexposed, to the public. Life moves on. New lives in a restaurant in Abingdon. In the years that followed, life took unforeseen turns. Michael, a successful car dealership owner, was later convicted of fraud unrelated to Marlene's death. He spent 3 years in prison, freed in the mid-2000s. After release, Michael and Sheila relocated far from Wellington. They settled in Abingdon, rebranded themselves, and operated a little restaurant together. Sheila, seeking a fresh start, officially changed her name to Debbie. Under their new personalities, they maintained a humble life, until Joe, now a young man but still mourning, began reporting developments online and calling local police. He could not quit asking for justice, even decades later. Cold case reopened, DNA to the rescue. By 2014, to 24 years after Marlene's murder, the field of forensic science had drastically improved. DNA profiling had become common in cold case investigations globally. Law enforcement from all over began re-examining unsolved homicides where physical evidence had been preserved. Laws changed, money increased, and many jurisdictions reopened old files. The Wellington Police Department, with collaboration from state forensic labs, listed Marlene's case among others, and identified the strands of hair from the getaway car. Laboratory tests proved the hair had human DNA, and it remained uncontaminated thanks to careful storage. In 2017, after putting the hairs through national DNA databases and comparing them to profiles from Scalia, Abingdon, and adjacent jurisdictions, one profile matched Sheila Keene, aka Debbie, positively. This gave authorities probable reason to arrest her, 27 years after the crime. Sheila's arrest, denial, and confession. Detectives traveled to Abingdon to arrest Sheila, now Debbie, working at her restaurant. She was taken into custody and quizzed about the murder of Marlene. Initially, she denied all involvement, even stating she had never been in Wellington that day. The legal process dragged on. There were many continuances, mental health assessments, evidentiary hearings. Finally, in 2023, after describing every episode and facing overwhelming DNA evidence, Sheila confessed in open court. She admitted the terrible act, disguised as a clown, approaching Marlene's house and shooting her at the doorstep. Sheila maintained Michael had no involvement, he neither planned nor knew about the murder, and she acted merely to claim land for Michael, expecting it would secure a fresh start for them in Abingdon. She also stated, with terrifying frankness, that she wore a clown costume because she loved clowns and hoped it would mislead detectives into thinking it was a random serial murderer, so deflecting attention. Sentencing, injustice, or justice? Sheila was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 12 years in jail. However, her stint behind bars did not last as long as many expected. By 2017, she had already spent 7 years in custody, between arrest and trial. Her lawyers argued for credit, citing her behavior, lack of aggressive intent beyond the act, and psychiatric examinations. The judge provided good behavior credits and released her in 2023, after estimating that she had effectively spent 8.5 years, far less than her full sentence. The result aroused controversy. Victims' rights groups said the penalty was too light for a cold-blooded murder. Joe, Marlene's surviving son, yelled in court, claiming in no uncertain terms that justice had not been served. The court supported the judgment, noting it was within legal standards and taking into consideration time served, good behavior, and plea deals. Michael, never accused, now lived quietly, his life permanently clouded by grief, scandal, and whispers of complicity. Reflections, aftermath, and justice delayed. This instance raises troubling, difficult questions. Can cold case developments give actual justice so many years later? When DNA is the sole remaining proof, how should the justice system evaluate time served and good behavior against the severity of the crime? How fair is it for a murderer to come home after only 8.5 years for murdering someone in plain view of her family? For Joe, the surviving child, there may never be closure. The story also displays terrible irony. Employing a clown disguise, usually linked with laughter, turned into something completely horrifying. It was intended as camouflage, a terrible trick to confuse investigators, and mislead. It did, for nearly 3 decades. For clarity, here's a rundown of the main dates. 1972. Marlene marries Michael, her second marriage. 1988. Marlene's older son John dies. May 22, 1990. Sheila buys the clown costume. May 26, 1990. Sheila, dressed as clown, murders Marlene at her porch, getaway car located nearby. Mid-1990s to 2014. Michael and Sheila migrate. Michael convicted of fraud. Sheila renamed Debbie and starts a restaurant. 2014. Police reopen case using latest DNA technologies. 2017. Sheila arrested based on DNA match. 2023. Sheila confesses and is sentenced, but released shortly after due to time already served and good behavior. Now, Sheila is free, Michael remains uncharged, Joe continues to campaign for fair justice. Reflection and final thought. Sheila's decision to disguise herself as a clown wasn't random, it was a tactical plan. She assumed it would place suspicion on an anonymous invader, not someone close to the family. The property motive is clear. Marlene held substantial real estate. In 1990, with fewer protections and no prenuptial agreements, her demise would have transferred assets to Michael. DNA evidence constituted the turning point. It solved an almost 30-year-old murder, proving the strength of modern forensics. Yet the ethical problem remains. Should those who kill be free so soon? Critics highlight equal justice for victims, not only defendants. Joe's pain persists. Losing his mother as a teenager, only to watch her killer live a decade and a half longer, has left a terrible emotional scar. This terrible case is a harsh reminder that time does not erase consequences, but it often complicates justice. Sheila's ingenious but brutal disguise shows how innocence can be weaponized, and how love, or obsession, may lead to life-shattering betrayal. Joe may continue to battle in courts or through public campaigns, advocating for legislative reforms in sentencing. Michael's name remains marred, though technically unconvicted. The rumors of guilt persist. If you found this recounting fascinating and would like more deep dive accounts on real crimes solved or unsolved cold cases, please let me know. I'm happy to construct investigative narratives, study legal controversies, or interview experts on forensics, law, and ethics. Thank you for listening to this long yet crucial account of betrayal, forensic success, and continued sorrow. Let me know how you'd like me to proceed. Maybe a follow-up Q&A, a podcast-style script, or a shorter version for social media, in the comments.